Okay, thank you. So what I prepared to talk to you about today is starting with an example. The focus of the presentation is to talk about a methodology that we call MEiRA, which is an acronym for the words in Spanish, Marco de Evaluación de Impacto y Reconocimiento del Aprendizaje Aplicado. So the idea, it is a framework to measure impact and recognize applied learning. But instead of going directly into MEiRA, I'll say a couple of words about MEiRA, but actually this presentation will focus first on an example of someone. We have a lot of someones, and I had to choose one to focus and tell a story. But MEiRA, before we go to the case, MEiRA is a methodology that has 5 pillars. 3 of them are measurements that we do within the capacity building experience. It could be a course, but it could also be something else. And these first 3 pillars, they measure initially dedication, then they measure perception and appreciation. Pillar 3 measures cognition and acquisition of knowledge. And finally, the pillars 4 and 5 are the ones that take place after the course is completed. And that's I would say, the interesting part about this methodology that differentiates it from other methodologies that try to measure, try to evaluate training. So the pillars 4 and 5, what they try to do is that they go back to the person that has completed the training and asks them to demonstrate their intention in how do they think they can apply what they have learned during their training. And then finally, within a period of time, a short period of time, we usually do most of 2 months, we come back to this person that has been assessed in their plan, and we ask them to tell a story. So how did you actually use what you have learned? So the recognition part happens 3 times. So we use badges, but it could be actually other instrument of recognition, but we do use badges. The person has 3 opportunities to be recognized. First, completing the training. So basically in terms of cognition and whatever the objectives were of the learning. And then in these 2 pillars, pillar 4 and pillar 5, are other opportunities of recognition. First, showing their plan of using what they learn, and then finally telling the story of what they learned. So this is made in a nutshell. But I want to, instead of going more deeply into the methodology and details, I want to tell a story. We have been using this methodology for, I would almost 3 years now. So it has been polished in terms of implementation, and we have several cases of using this. So we can go to the next slide, Andy, when I tried to tell one story. So let's consider this situation. This is a person who's a director of projects in this foundation that is in the Dominican Republic, related to children. And the course in focus here that this person, this is the learning, right, where the 3 first pillars were measured, is a course on criminal analysis. And basically, it's a very intense course. It is self-paced, but it's very intense. And the focus is really to create a common nomenclature for criminal analysis. And the challenge here is really to strengthen institutions to have good response in complex situations, in various situations of criminality. This case, this person works for a child protection organization, and it's focused on the rights and well-being of children. And so the idea here, we applied MEiRA to this course. So this person was able to complete the course, and then through using pillars 4 and 5, this person was able to use what they had learned in terms of criminal analysis in their situation, in their organization. So the challenge is very practical and important. So we can see through his application that he was able to a couple of steps beyond just learning the content of the training. We can go to the next slide, Andy. So he applied the course concepts by moving from just criminal analysis concepts to using it within the institution. This person was able to implement a project, so supporting the organization response in cases of sexual abuse of children. And through MEiRA, not only he plans this, but then he shows, telling his story, he shows that there's an evidence that he has used what he has learned in the course for this practical and contextual situation. So he generated a report, and there was an analytical product and geospatial maps and data process, because this course in criminal analysis, there's a lot of knowledge in terms of how you look at hot maps and things like that in terms of criminality. And finally, the other element that we also use to assess this impact, which I believe is very, very important, is the sharing of what you have learned within your organization. So this person, beyond using it for the project and producing an evidence, this person was able to lead internal training and advance analytical techniques in this area of child protection. So MEiRA is interesting because what it does, it goes back to the person and it pushes the learning a little bit beyond what the normal learning experience would be. Sometimes when we do evaluation of impact of training, we try to be observers and not change what we are observing. MEiRA is very different from that, because actually it pushes the person to do something beyond what they did in the course. And in pushing that and in asking questions, etc., it is part of an extended learning journey of the training itself. We can go to the next slide, Andy. So what we have been doing with MEiRA is that we look at the change that is produced after the training in 3 big buckets. This is how we organize the data. The person doesn't have to produce the evidence in that way, but when we collect the information from pillars 4 and pillar 5, we look at it and we produce our insights from what we collect, looking at these 3 levels of change. So first, at a personal level, so in this case, a stronger analytical and leadership skills developed by this person because they had to use in the project, and they had to share this within their institution. This person also demonstrated a more structured approach to these complex problems, and also this reinforced commitment to protecting children and adolescents, which is the context in which he works. Then at the level of processes, his actions and what he implemented helped to make investigations faster and more precise using the analysis that he learned in the course, using the geospatial tools and network analysis, and producing processes that had better coordination and communication within teams. And finally, at the institutional level, this is strengthening the institutional capacity, not only because of his own capacity, but his capabilities of sharing this with colleagues, improving collaboration at national and international levels, and positioning his foundation as a reference in this field. So a lot of these things come out of this what MEiRA does in this case is not measure this long term. It tries to measure small changes that have this impact at these 3 levels. We can go to the next one, Andy. So what we used to do before MEiRA is that we had been using badges for a long time. We have more than 300,000 badges all over the place. But before MEiRA, what we were doing was just recognizing course completion. You know, you have achieved the objective of learning, you have participated, you have done the activities, and that was it. So what MEiRA changes is that it pushes the recognition to really try to capture, to have a snapshot of something that the person was able to do with what they have learned. That's why the time that we use, you know, the issue of attribution is always a challenge to measure impact, to evaluate impact of training. So we usually use 2 months max after the person has completed the training to recognize the learning, not only the learning was achieved, but there is an intention and a commitment to apply the learning. So that's where the pillar 4 comes in. You know, you actually are nudged to show how you will use it, and then to document this transfer of knowledge in a practical context. And then the recognition through the evidence makes this contribution visible and placed within a real context. Next slide, Andy. So I already explained MEiRA in a nutshell. We are right now, we have been implementing MEiRA using our own LMS. We use Moodle, and we have been implementing MEiRA within that environment, but it could actually be implemented with different platforms. What Moodle has allowed us to do is that we actually create a class that we capture all the information from these pillars 4 and 5. So this doesn't get mixed up with the training. The data is separate. Also, what we have been doing is the participation in these 2 pillars after the course is very structured, and that has helped not only people participate, but also trying to analyze the data that we collect from all these individuals, producing patterns and insights about maybe commonalities between different individuals in using what they had learned. And in that area, one of our concerns was the scalability of this methodology. So the structuring was really key into making it scalable, because in the beginning, when we really started, this was really mom and pop shop, very crafty. And we only asked people for their plan, and they would deliver the plan as they thought they should. And now we have it very structured with a questionnaire. So having the data structured has allowed for us to scale. And the way we are scaling this is putting AI together with a human, because as soon as we have the collection of data more structured, we can use AI to have a filter and then have the human coming in and looking at it. We usually even work with it's a very, very individualized process. So the person might even receive a feedback in which we say, you know, we're missing this little piece of data, or you have to add this, because sometimes they don't really, people sometimes finish a course and they haven't even thought really about how they will use what they have learned. So MEiRA is almost like sparking that idea. Okay, now before you go, make a commitment here that you will use it, and think about your context. So one of the activities that commonly people do at first is doing this contextual analysis. Sometimes they even come back to us and they say, I don't think I can use this because my context has these barriers. And we consider this as a plan. I call this the no plan, but it is enough of you recognizing that your context requires other elements that they don't have complete control. So we recognize that too. So it's these steps is really pushing the learning to another level. So that's why, we consider MEiRA as an evaluation, but it is actually a very pedagogically sound in terms of pushing the learning beyond what a normal training would have people do. That is what I had. I actually have a link here that I want to share in the chat. I had it ready. This is, and also the QR code that I have there is exactly for this publication. This is the main publication that we generated about MEiRA. I would also want to share something that has made me very, very happy is that we had, I work for a development bank. All our training is done in those areas of development, and we have now interest from the Pan American Health Organization. They have also implemented MEiRA in a huge course, in the very basic course in terms of health. They have a huge online footprint in that kind of training. And also we have already someone from UNESCO that has used MEiRA in a completely different setting, a very long-term training that they have for superintendents in schools. So our interest is really that the methodology can be used in a variety of contexts. I think our experience with structuring the responses is helpful, but the methodology itself is very flexible. I would say that the only requirement that MEiRA has is that it requires that the knowledge is assessed. So you can't have pillars 4 and 5 if you haven't measured that the learning has been achieved in a formal sense.
Wow. RPL plus. Actually, so maybe somebody that I don't particularly like, but I like the idea of I grade it RPL plus 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 plus. If people know what I'm talking about. We've got a couple of minutes. Questions for Stella or comments? I got a quick question. Did you find that when institutions went through this process, it also improved the quality of the taught course?
Oh, this is an excellent question. So the way MEiRA has been used is sometimes the course already exists and you have to develop the instruments of MEiRA with the course that already exists. And when you do that, you actually are pushed to go back to the needs analysis of the course, right? So a lot of times what that does is that you unveil things in such a deep level that you hadn't done when you just completed needs analysis to develop objectives of a course. You actually have to work with the specialists in the field to really, okay, what is the very little thing that changes behaviors of these people the next day after they have completed the training? And why I'm saying this is that when MEiRA is used to develop the course from the start, it's actually a wonderful tool to do very rich needs analysis and answering your question. It helps really to define, what is it really that I want to teach here? And the other element of using MEiRA right in the beginning is that since you know that you're going to ask those questions when they complete the course, you kind of change the way you teach because you're taking them towards that. So it becomes it has a greater opportunity to become way more practical and provide more opportunities for reflection on how to use those things in people's contexts. So definitely, just applying MEiRA already usually makes the course way more practical and grounded.
RPL, the solution to everything. Thank you so much, Stella. That was fascinating. And again, just one more thing to think about from today.